As an introduction, we'd like to acknowledge that our mission at Vose Library is to advance learning, inspire curiosity, enrich lives, and excuse me, and promote community. With that in mind, let me introduce our guest. Union resident Kathi Langelier has received numerous awards over the years for her formulas from places such as the American Herbalist Guild, International Herb Symposium, and New England Made shows. Having studied clinical herbalism with David Winston, Leslie Alexander, and Leslita Williams, Kathi has spent the last 25 years of her life following her passion for organic farming, herbal medicine, and community wellness with great dedication. In her book, Herbal Revolution, 65 plus recipes for teas, elixirs, tinctures, syrups, foods, plus body products that heal, Kathi shares her most popular and effective formulas to support your daily health and wellness. She guides readers on their herbal journey with the kind of wisdom and care one can only acquire from many years of devoting their life completely to their art. Without further ado, please help me welcome Kathi Langelier. Hi, Kathi.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And it's so nice to be here.
I'm sorry about the pronunciation on your last name. I tried to practice.
Sorry.
But I apologize.
It's kind of funny. It's totally fine. I grew up with people, not knowing how to say my name correctly. And Stephen King, when I was a kid, came out with a book called The Langoliers, or one of the characters were the Langoliers. So
yeah.
it just added to, especially when that book came out. But
that must be where I'm getting.
Yeah, it's really funny.
All right. Well, I'm going to stop sharing so you can have the screen. And again, welcome. We are very excited to have you tonight.
Great. Thank you for having me. So thank you, everybody. It's so nice to see so many of you here. I'm going to talk about digestion, spring detox, and digestive health. This springtime, we are, spring is coming. Spring is coming. I can feel it. It's coming. And so it seems like a really good topic to be discussing. So one of the chapters in my book is called Go With Your Gut, and it's called Go With Your Gut, Intuitive, Creative, and Digestive Health. So I thought it would be a great place to start. So real quick, a little bit about me. This is me on the farm with one of our many kitties. This is Cover Girl. She was actually she was a bottle raised. We found her in our barn, kicked out of a litter. She was a run, and we bottle raised this little baby kitty. So she's our special little farm diva. I have been studying and working with plant-based medicine and herbs for over 25 years, and I've been organic farming for nearly as long. I'm from Maine. I was born and raised in Maine, born in Lewiston and raised in Turner. And so it was obviously, cell phones and computers. So I grew up in an age where I spent my time outside, and I got to know all the plants in this amazing state. So growing up in Western Maine, we had all kinds of things. And I didn't necessarily know things were specifically medicinal, but I had a decent idea of things that were maybe at least food, could be used for food, and or could be made into drinks. And that was just from learning from other Mainers and people like community members or neighbors, and just reading books. And so it was around when I was about a teenager, 18 or 19, I started to really dive into understanding the plants in our ecosystem on a deeper level, and understanding what foods were growing right outside our door, and plants that could be used as food and or medicine. Because really, and some of the plants that I'm going to talk to you about tonight were foods for many of our grandparents or great-grandparents or great-great-grandparents. And I know that, my mama was still alive when I started this journey, and I would ask her all kinds of questions. And she used to tell me how her mother made her take these bitter syrups and eat these bitter greens in the springtime. So it really was part of the many people's lifestyle. And it's more, I would say probably in the last maybe even 40 to 50 years where this is not as common a practice, but used to be, especially with the springtime, because there are really a lot of great plants that grow literally in our backyards that are wonderfully nutritious and delicious. So I'm going to jump right in. So I've been doing this, and I was reached out by a publication called Page Street Publishing, maybe 2 years ago now, asking me if I would write a book, a recipe book, an herbal recipe book, which is something that I really love doing. Creating herbal formulas is something that I love doing. Growing the plants is my first passion, but then creating with the plants really comes next. But for me, it's really important to have that relationship with the plants. If I didn't have the relationship with the plants, I wouldn't be creating with them, and I certainly wouldn't have the business that I have today. So what happens often is when I'm out working with the plants, I get inspired to make them into different things. So it sounded like a fun project, and I said sure. They asked me to do it. They reached out to me at the beginning of farming season, and unless you're a farmer, maybe it's hard to understand that we're insane, and then asking us to take on an extra project is really intense. So they wanted me to do this in 3 months, and it took a year and a half. So I'm glad they stuck with it. But we're excited. This book came out just in December, so it's not been out for very long. And I'm excited to share some excerpts with you. So where I thought I would start is right here, is how everything is connected. I think it's always important, and throughout the book, I do this with each chapter. I think it's important for us to have a little bit of an understanding of the function of the body and to imagine it a little bit, because the more we understand about how our body works, the more we just understand how we can take care of ourselves, is really how I look at it. And you don't need to know a ton in order to just have the basic understanding of what's happening with certain functions. And so one thing that I love about this is, when we think about our digestive systems, I think it's easy to just think about our stomachs. Our digestive system is our stomach and maybe just our intestines, but it's so much more. So I thought what I would do is I'm going to read a couple excerpts out of the very beginning of the book, of this particular chapter. So this is the Go With Your Gut chapter. And I'm just going to read a little bit of the beginning and then kind of tie that all together. So bear with me. I haven't read out loud like this since I was like in high school or something. So the chapter is Go With Your Gut, Intuition, Creativity, and Digestive Health. Everything is connected. A great deal of my ideas for creating formulas happen while I'm out in the farm working with the plants. One day while harvesting in the beautiful chamomile patch, I was thinking about the medicinal benefits of chamomile and how literally everything is connected. The digestive system isn't just our stomach and intestines. It's also our mouth, our esophagus, our liver, our gallbladder, our spleen, and our colon, and still much more. Much of the nervous system lives within our digestive tract, and research is starting to back up what many have intuitively known for years when it comes to the gut and mind connection. Hence the saying, go with your gut. Because there are tons of nerves connecting the gut to our brains, what happens in our guts can shape our emotions, mental clarity, and creativity. Eating certain foods can leave our bodies feeling light and energetic, emotionally joyful, and mentally clear, or they can cause us to feel heavy, weighted down in our body, angry, frustrated, anxious, mentally blocked, and foggy in the brain. When we think of our systems of the body, we often seem to separate them from one another, which sometimes is necessary when dealing with certain situations. But it's also important to remember that all the systems within our bodies are connected. We intuitively feel and think from our centers. If the digestive system is off, then it can make trusting our guts more challenging. So I believe it's important when formulating for the digestive system that we include nervines, bitters, hepatoprotectants, aromatics, and carminatives. I use these herbs with all of these actions in the recipes. And I'll be going over, so these actions that I just mentioned, actions such as bitters and carminatives and hepatoprotectives, we'll talk about that and what that means and why I think it's important to use those. So I put this, even though it's, I originally wanted to put just a beautiful picture of all these plants because it's just, let's make it pretty. But I thought it was really important to put this image of the body and the whole digestive tract so you could see what it looks like. Because all of these things, like I just said, all play a part. And one thing that starts is really our digestive system literally starts up in our mouths. When we put food in our mouths, those salivary glands start to engage our digestive system and engage enzymes to help our bodies start to process the foods and the nutrients that we're putting into our bodies. And one of the actions that bitters, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, but one of the actions that bitters have is that they help stimulate that process. When you eat something that is bitter, it helps literally stimulate those enzymes and engage them into starting. So it's really pretty exciting. And so just something to like kind of keep in mind, that everything is connected, and the importance of the nervous system. I think that I've always thought that was kind of amazing, that so much of our nervous system lies within our guts and that intuitive space. So let's jump right into bitters. Right here, we have some of my favorite bitters. And, one thing I just want to stop and say is that, we're going to be talking about plants here, and some of these recipes talk about using fresh plants. It's so important that you know what you're harvesting. I can't stress that enough. If you do not recognize, if you're not familiar and you don't have any good field guides, I just highly recommend don't go and harvest anything. Because even though we don't have a ton of toxic lookalikes, there's nonetheless lookalikes of many plants. So there's lots of great books out there, and I just recommend local field guides, and I'm sure the library could really be a great resource for some field guides on how to properly identify. And I know it's COVID time right now, but maybe when that's lifted and we're able to interact a little bit more, I'm sure that there's classes out there too, and we're going to start doing a lot more classes here on the farm as well. So really important. And just, know what you're harvesting, know where you're harvesting things from, make sure it's chemical free, and that you just know what you're doing. So bitters help promote and aid digestion and absorption, and they stimulate that digestive secretion. So this is just a little blurb of what bitters can do. I love how they can help promote absorption of food. Sometimes when our digestive systems are really bogged down, it's hard for us to always absorb everything, and bitters can be really great with that. Bitters can also be helpful for acid reflux. Orange peel is actually one of is a really good bitter for that. But right here in this picture, what you're looking at yellow dock, burdock, and dandelion root. These are all plants that do grow locally, and they're plants that you can harvest if you know how to harvest properly, to harvest locally. I really recommend, when it comes to harvesting things, I highly recommend harvesting from your garden. If you have a space that you want to grow things, many of these things like yellow dock, burdock, and dandelion are considered unwanted weeds. But for me, they are I look at them as food and medicine. But I like to harvest them from my garden so that I can be creating more space for other things to come in. So other places too is like reaching out to your local farmers. Reaching out to local farmers is a great place too, because a lot of farmers want these same plants out of their gardens as well. So that's another place you could reach out to, is if you have local farmers. There's a lot of us around. We have a great community of organic local farms here in Union. So maybe reaching out to some local farms that might want some help weeding, you get to help the farmer, and then you get to go home with the bounty of food and medicine to work with. So the first recipe that we have here is the spring digestive vinegar. And again, I want to stress, because this right now is written in the book as fresh, using fresh things. So you need to understand how to identify it and how to harvest it. Now, do you have to harvest? Do you have to make this fresh? You don't. And right now, I don't have any fresh material to work with because things haven't started to grow yet. When I wrote this book in the beginning, I really encourage people to work with what they have, to be creative, to use this book as a roadmap and as a guide, but to take it on and make it more of your own and work with what you have on your property and or in your kitchen. So, and honestly, to the point where, I'm somebody, I've been forced to write down my recipes because I run a business and we have to make things consistent. When I'm at home making things for myself, I'm eyeballing things. I'm putting a handful of this in, a handful of that in. And I actually wanted to write this book like that. And the publishers just wouldn't let me do it. But I really encourage that kind of thing. Like if you just have a handful of something, throw it in. So with this recipe right here, I want to say that a lot of these herbs and plants are all wonderful spring plants. The chickweed grows, it might even be starting in some gardens, but it often is in gardens and a lot of people don't like it. It's an unwanted weed, but chickweed is incredibly nutritious. It's high in minerals and vitamins. It's wonderful for our lymphatic system. And again, you can use these dried. You can have dried chickweed, or if you can't get chickweed at all, then don't put it in it. You don't have to. The dandelion roots and dandelion leaves. Dandelion roots and dandelion leaves are both highly nutritious as well. When working with, I'm going to say that all of this whole entire recipe, all the plants that I used in here, with the exception of maybe the ginger, are herbs that are high in minerals and vitamins. And I've made them into a vinegar, and I use vinegar as the solvent to extract the medicinal properties, because vinegar is incredible at extracting minerals and vitamins from plants. So when working with plant medicine, there's different solvents that I use. And I could use alcohol, I could use water, I could use honey, or I could use vinegar. There's various things that can be used. And I use different solvents depending on what I'm trying to extract from the plant. Some plants have alcohol soluble medicinal constituents that I want, so I'll use alcohol. But if they have mineral constituents that I want, or the medicinal properties I want are minerals, then I'm going to use vinegar. So that's why vinegar is being used here. It's also alcohol free, and you can always, if you want alcohol free, vinegar is a really great way of making tinctures alcohol free. So there's dandelion roots in this, dandelion leaves, burdock root, violet leaves, which again is also another really nutritious. Violet leaves are incredibly high in vitamins and they're very nutritious. They're another plant that's wonderful for our lymphatic system. And so I love it I love it for my lymphatic system. And it's just nice to have that as a gentle lymphatic. And yellow dock is wonderful for the digestive system. Both the yellow dock, dandelion, and the burdock are all great for helping keep everything moving in the colon. So they're not like overstimulating laxative, but they help things. If you're feeling that you're constipated or that your digestive system is sluggish, those three herbs can really help get the system kind of back on track. They're also incredibly grounding. They feel grounding. You feel grounded when you drink them or use them. And then ginger root, I throw ginger into everything because it's just so delicious. It's so tasty. And then you can make this with honey or not. I personally really like making most things with honey. I love that little extra sweetness or maple syrup. I would say in the vinegars, the honey personally, I think tastes better than maple syrup, but play around with that. And then the apple cider vinegar. So I have usually for this recipe right here, this recipe was written for a quart jar. So in the book, you will find that this is meant to be made in a quart jar. But for today's purposes, I just have a small, jar because I want to show you what I would do. So, you know, again, this is how you can be playful with it. Let's say you don't want to make a whole quart, or you don't have the ingredients to make a whole quart. You can just half it or quarter the recipe and put it in a jam jar. So that's one way of working with this book and the recipes in here. So what I'll do is I'll have my herbs. Now, because this normally is fresh, I would be chopping all of those up. So I would be taking all those fresh herbs and I would chop them up nicely and then be placing them into and I wouldn't necessarily put them through a blender. You could, but I think that a nice chopping, a fine or even a fine chop is efficient enough and sufficient enough to put them into the jar that way. Now, if you're using dry, and I'll say this with the other recipes too, the book recommends that you grind them. But again, this is not necessary. But if you have, say, a coffee grinder, I'll show you actually what mine looks like. I should have had that prepared. I just use a regular, for my home use, I just used a little regular coffee grinder and I put my herbs in here to grind them. And so when you do that, again, it's not necessary, but when you have the ability to grind them, you're creating more surface space for the liquid to extract from. So that's the reason for doing that. But again, you still are going to make a delicious fine vinegar if you don't powder it. So I would take all my ingredients and I would put them into the jar. And then it's just so simple. It's basically just filling the jar. And can I just say, I would be using Sewell's organic apple cider vinegar for this because it is the best vinegar ever. So go to your local co-op and get some Sewell's. So because I'm going to be putting honey in it, I'm going to take this and I'm going to now put the honey. So I put the herbs in and now I'm going to put the honey in. And again, you know, I give some suggestions of like well, I guess I put optional for this one. Sometimes I give suggestions like put a tablespoon or two in. So I would just sort of put a couple spoonfuls, because what you can do is once you strain this, you can adjust it and you can add more honey. This is, you know, you can never take the honey out. So if you don't like things too sweet, I would err on caution and not put too much in. And then you can always adjust the sweetness after you've strained it. So then I will put the vinegar in to the jar. And what you're going to have is, and it's so hard to see, you can't see this. This is the hard thing of demonstrating via Zoom. So I'm sorry, you're not seeing and hearing the gurgling, but there's all these air bubbles that are happening. Maybe you can kind of see the air bubbles happening. So a lot of the air bubbles are happening. And what I tend to do, because you want to get rid of those air bubbles, is I take a stick and I'll use like maybe a chopstick and I will press this. And I wish you could see what's happening. You can't see the air bubbles, but just trust me on this. You want to push this. Can you see how I'm pushing the fork all the way to the stick all the way down? You want to do this until all the air bubbles stop coming up. So this might take a few minutes. So just keep doing this, getting all the way down to the bottom. And I don't have, and then after I've gotten all the air bubbles out, I'm going to, because there's still a little head space, I'm going to take some more of the vinegar and I'm going to put more vinegar in there. This does make a little bit of mess, so just be prepared. And then I wouldn't use metal. All I have is metal. I couldn't find my plastic lids, but just so I can show you. So what you could use is, instead of a metal lid, you could use cheesecloth. Instead of this lid, you can put cheesecloth and then put the ring back on and hold it on with the cheesecloth. But there's also these PBA free plastic lids that you can get at probably down here at the well, not the Agway, but at True Value possibly, and or Seven Tree, the old Agway, and or you can find it at Rankin's and places like that. And then I'm just gonna shake it, and I'm gonna hold it upside down. I'm just gonna shake it and shake it and shake it. And then I'm going to go put this on my counter, and I'm going to let it hang out for 4 to 6 weeks. And throughout those 4 to 6 weeks, I'm going to check on it. I'm going to shake it. I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to see if there's more headspace that's been created. And if so, I'll add more vinegar to it, and then I'll cover it back up, shake it, and be done. And then after 6 weeks, you're going to strain that. And again, you can taste it. And if it's not, to your sweet liking, you can add more honey to it. But then how can you use it? There's so many great ways of using this. You can add it to, I love using our vinegars for roasted veggies. I love using it as a base. I make my own salad dressings. So I use it as a salad dressing mixed with olive oil and maybe some mustard. So those are really fantastic ways of using it. Also, I like adding it to soups. I love how vinegar brings out, vinegar is just a really wonderful thing that can help sort of balance soups and sort of lighten it and bring out other flavors. So I would use it in soups as well. So there's a lot of different ways that you can utilize this vinegar. And I know some people like to drink vinegar every day. So instead of just drinking your plain apple cider vinegar, I would encourage you to drink this instead, because instead of just plain apple cider vinegar, you're now getting apple cider vinegar with all those extra benefits of the minerals and vitamins from these herbs. So, and all that extra digestive support. So those are a few ways of using this vinegar. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about are hepatoprotectives, which are herbs that help protect and support the functions of the liver. And these are herbs like turmeric, schizandra, burdock root, and dandelion root. So literally these plants can be really beneficial for not only just protecting our liver, but helping our liver with its everyday processes. So we always hear people talk about spring detox and detox this and detox that. And, I have my feelings about it, but there is something to it to a degree. And our bodies, one, though, naturally do detox. That is the function of our liver. Our liver is to detox our bodies. But it's nice to help support our liver, because our liver is inundated with a lot of things, whether it just be environmental stuff. There's just always a lot going on. But if we are taking medications or eating heavy foods, this can this can tax our liver a little bit. So it's nice to add foods and herbs into our diet that can help support those functions of the liver. And that's what some of these herbs do. Also, they help some of these herbs help with the metabolism of various fats as well. So if your diet has been a little heavier, I know for the winter time in general, our diets tend to be heavier. We're eating heavier foods. We're eating all those root vegetables and comfort foods, which can be really delicious and whatnot, but they can be heavier and they can weigh our liver down a little bit, which is why I think once the sun comes out and the spring shows up, we're feeling like we're craving more things. We're craving those salad greens, which are bitters, often bitter. So our bodies naturally kind of want to go through this process of lightening things up. So adding foods, the turmeric into your diet can be really beneficial. So this next recipe is what I would call is an elixir. So herbal tinctures, I'm going to just stop and sort of give, just assume that maybe nobody knows what an herbal tincture is. A tincture is creating an extraction of pulling it's putting together an herb and a solvent, and that solvent extracts the medicinal properties. And I kind of discussed that There's certain ways that you can extract, like with water or alcohol. Tinctures are specifically made with either alcohol and or maybe a vinegar, possibly wine. Back originally, tinctures were things were extracted in wine long before, you know, hard alcohol was available. And vinegar as well. Vinegar, apple cider vinegar, and wine were the oldest ways of extracting herbal medicine. So an elixir is essentially a tincture, but it's a sweetened tincture. So it goes down a little bit easier, which I think is really important, is making medicine taste good. I'm a full believer, and this is why what I stand for with my business, Herbal Revolution, is we want people to want to take this and to look at it not much as medicine, but as something as a part of their daily routine of preventative care. And the better it tastes, the more people get excited about taking it. Because when it doesn't taste good, you know, I've seen people like, oh, I've got to go take that. They're already creating this negativity around taking the medicine, and you know, it's just no fun. So the better it tastes, the better it is for everyone. So this particular elixir I really like a lot. This is wonderful for the digestive system because it's very supportive to the liver, but it's also an incredibly anti-inflammatory. The herbs in here, the turmeric, the ginger, the burdock, are all anti-inflammatory. The schizandra, these are all things that are anti-inflammatory. And when our digestive system is all out of whack, there's inflammation. So having herbs that are anti-inflammatory are great. So with this, again, you work with what you have. Schizandra is a harder one to find. You can most likely go into our local natural food store, either down at the Good Turn, or go to Fresh Off the Farm, or Belfast Co-op, or Rising Tide, and you're going to have no problem finding turmeric root, and especially fresh turmeric root. I know that Fresh Off the Farm has, and I think probably Good Turn as well. And so this is what fresh turmeric looks like. And I'm just going to scrape away some of see how beautiful and orange that is. Isn't that gorgeous? So if you have access to fresh turmeric, great. But if you don't, that's fine. For this purposes, used dried. So you can use the powder as well. So work with what you have. And you can even exchange, if you don't have dried ginger root, but you have fresh ginger root, awesome. Use the fresh ginger root. And if you don't have, let's say you can't find schizandra, then just omit it. That's okay. You don't need to have it. Astragalus root, you probably will find. And then there's online places like Mountain Rose Herbs or Pacific Botanicals. And these are all herbal places where you would be able to find schizandra. So what I do is I would take all of the herbs and I would put them into my jar. Again, for this purpose, you know, I'm not grinding them just because I wanted you to see a little bit, even though it's still hard to see. I wanted you to be able to see things and not have them be totally powdered. But if you have a way of powdering them, powder them and add them into your jar. And I would then take the jar and put your honey into them. And then you're going to add your alcohol. And let's talk about alcohol real quick. You can kind of use whatever you want. I like to pair things depending on like what the flavors are. But two of my favorite alcohols, like for this, I'm going to use vodka. Vodka is really clean. It doesn't leave, it really absorbs the flavors of the herbs so that it's just a nice, clean tincture or elixir. And those flavors of those various herbs and spices that you're using will really come through clean. Now, not to say that doesn't happen with the brandy, but with brandy, for instance, because brandy is another great one to use. Brandy, I like to use with other herbs because the brandy brings its own flavor, where, you know, the vodka it's just sort of there to like infuse and extract the flavors. The brandy is going to extract the flavors too, but it's going to blend with the tones of the flavor that brandy already brings. So an example of what I might use with brandy would be like making an elderberry syrup. I love making an elderberry syrup with brandy and maple syrup because it goes so well with those notes. So you can play around with different alcohols. I mean, if you have bourbon and whiskey, use that. But my favorite is truly the vodka in most scenarios. So I would take that alcohol and I would pour it into the jar again. And you're going to do the exact same thing. I mean, it's really like once you have an idea of what the herbs do and what the benefits and what you'd like to do with them, the making of it is really quite easy and wonderful. You just put them in a jar and you fill them with alcohol and honey and call it a day. But you're going to do the same thing. You want to get those air bubbles out. So you're going to just take something. I really like a wooden chopstick, and you're going to just get those air bubbles out. Add more of the alcohol. Continue doing that. And then cap it off. And you're going to shake it up. The very same thing that you did with the vinegar. All of these recipes, you're going to do that same thing. You're going to shake it up. Can you see that? You're going to shake that up, and you're going to let this sit for 4 to 6 weeks. During those 4 to 6 weeks, you're going to also do the same thing. You're going to shake it. You're going to check on it. You're going to see if it needs more alcohol added to it, but also taste it. I love tasting it through this process and seeing how it evolves and how it changes. And again, if you want it sweeter, add more honey. And when you strain it, that's again another great time to add more honey, and or play around with other things, other sweeteners. Maybe you like stevia, or you like, agave or other things. I personally like using maple syrup and honey. They're two things that I can buy from other local Mainers. And so that's what I really like to use for my sweeteners. And they're delicious. They're just so good. Oh, I wanted to say too, turmeric root, and you see black pepper in here, and ginger. Ginger, because it's amazing for the digestive system all around. It's so fantastic. I put ginger in almost everything because I think that there should always be something supporting the digestive system, and it's anti-inflammatory. But both ginger and black pepper work synergistically with turmeric, which means there's some plants that help enhance and pull out the properties of different plants and make it easier for our bodies to absorb. And so for turmeric, black pepper, and ginger root help our bodies absorb the constituents easier. So just a little, that's reasons why you'll often see with certain formulations, black pepper or ginger. But if you go and buy some of those like really expensive turmeric supplements, which I won't go too far down that road, but I suggest eating the turmeric first. You're going to get more benefits out of that than those fancy pills. But just make sure that they have maybe black pepper or ginger root, or if you get a tincture. So carminatives, beautiful carminatives. Carminatives help relieve gas, bloating, nausea, and all kinds of things that just like when you're feeling full and like crampy and just blah, you've just eaten way too much food, carminatives are the way to go. And one of my favorite carminatives is fennel seeds. And if I'm feeling just all like blah, my body's just out of whack, I'll nibble on some fennel seeds. If any of you have ever been out to eat to an Indian restaurant, they usually have like this little bowl of colorful things. And those are actually fennel seeds that are coated in like sugar. So fennel is just a really great ally for our digestive systems. And that's always my first go-to when I'm having a digestive problem. But chamomile, ginger, these are all examples of carminatives. So rhubarb bitters. This is a really fun blend. And I love it because rhubarb grows everywhere, and maybe not everywhere, but once you have it, you have it. And if you don't have it, it's easy to find it. There's somebody like that has a 50-year-old plant, you know, that they want to like help give some, you know, that they can't use enough of. So I like the rhubarb mostly because we have it. It's something that really comes up early in the summer, late spring, and it's tastes like summer, and it's just a fun plant to work with. Um, and it has a nice sour flavor, so it goes well with the recipe. The other herbs in this recipe are more of the actual medicinal parts that are more a bit more in there to for the digestive system, more so than the rhubarb. The rhubarb is there for playfulness and for flavoring. So lemon peel, I had mentioned orange peel at one point and about bitters, and I kind of wanted to go back to that. Both orange and lemon peel, when you open up an orange to eat, there's that white pith, and that actually is really good for our digestive systems to eat. And it has like a nice, lovely bitters to it. And orange and eating that is one of the best things we can do, or at least using orange peel in general. One thing that I meant to mention though, back when I talked about the bitters the first time, is that bitters tend to be cooling. And so if you're somebody that runs cold, like you're that person that's just like always wanting a turtleneck or a scarf, or you're always just kind of cold, I would be careful with some of these bitters, the burdock root, the dandelion root, these colder things that we've been talking about. So something to consider is making sure there's enough warming spices mixed in with those cooling herbs and those cooling bitters so that it's balanced. So like making sure there's plenty of ginger, and I would use dried ginger instead of fresh, because dried ginger has a lot more heating properties than the fresh. So this has lemon peel in it, which is fantastic. It's also delicious. So it's bringing, I think, great flavor, but it's helping our digestive system. The ginger, again, is there for warming. I put ginger in a lot of things, again, to help balance and bring warmth, but also for its digestive properties. Lemongrass is a wonderful plant. I love it. It's also works as a carminative, so it can be really helpful for bloating and for gas. Artichoke leaf, which I don't think a lot of people realize, is an incredible bitter. This plant is fantastic for supporting our digestive system, really great for helping with acid reflux. So is orange peel and lemon peel. And then chamomile. Chamomile is a plant that I love for many reasons. It is a carminative, again, so helping with that bloat or gas, or just nausea. And it's also really fantastic for our nervous system. And sort of going back to what we were talking about, how there's so much going on with our nervous system and our digestive system, it's wonderful to add herbs that are good for the nervous system into our digestive blends. Because how many people, like if you're all nerved up, all of a sudden you feel your digestive system start to act up and activate. um so they're making that connection between when we're feeling nervous or anxious. So chamomile can help keep us calm and keep our digestive system calm, and it's also a really great flavor. So with this one, you're going to do the same thing again. And I also, it's so hard to see, I wish you all could see how pretty it is. That, you know, I put all the herbs in here, and again, you don't have to grind them. The rhubarb I just chop up and I put it in. Sometimes I have played around in the past with like putting it all in a blender, so you could do that. You could put it all in a blender, or leave them whole, or run them through a spice grinder. And again, and I really love honey in this one. But again, if you are not doing honey or sweets, then you can omit that and not do that. And then again, I would put in the alcohol. And so I add, you can see, you know, there's additional, you know, some other options, and I put those down there. I always encourage you, use what you have, or substitute. And I really like using fennel. If you grow anise hyssop is delicious in this. We make a version of this for the business, and I make the business version with anise hyssop that we grow. And it brings a really, you don't need a lot, because they're very licorice in flavor, and it can be overpowering if you use too much, but just a little bit, and it really helps balance it out. But fennel seeds are really great too. And so again, you're going to just fill it to the top, let those air bubbles go, use your stick, get those air bubbles. Do it one more time, and then cap it and shake it, and then put it somewhere where you won't forget it, and check on it regularly, shake it. And again, after 4 to 6 weeks, you can strain it and use it. So what do you do with these now? You have your liver elixir, love your liver elixir, and you have this bitters, rhubarb bitters. So I personally love them all on their own. I think that they're delicious, but they can also be made into drinks. The rhubarb bitters could go with sparkling water. A lot of people have soda streams right now, so you can like add it to your bubbly water. You can make it into mocktails. A lot of people use bitters in cocktails, so this could go into your cocktails. So there's lots of different ways that you can use these things. And bitters, I mean, talking about cocktail bitters, I mean, we hear bitters used in the cocktail industry, but bitters were created for literally the digestive system way back when, and were used as aperitifs. So you would basically, aperitifs were something that you would drink before you had a meat, before your meal, because it got your stomach, your digestive system activated. So that's really where it all came from. It wasn't just to create, flavors for cocktails. It was actually made for helping our digestive system. And now it's just gotten into all kinds of wonderful creativity with cocktail making, but bitters always have been for the digestive system. So these are some fun recipes that I like to make, and hopefully you all will as well. And so the book, you'll find these recipes in the book, and where to start, I would start with the Vose library, or if you're not local to Union, you can find it at your local library or reach out. Same with your local bookstore. We sell the book at our website. And for those of you that are local, we don't currently have a retail space. It is a dream and a hope that we will have actually a retail space at our location someday. But until then, we encourage people to go to our website and use the pickup option. So we have a pickup option for our website, and local people can just come and pick up their order. And then if you don't want the physical book and you want a Kindle version, Amazon does offer that. And then some exciting things, right? So I talked about the local pickup, which is really, really exciting. I love that we offer that. And something really exciting that we're doing right now that I've been busy working on is creating this Plants of the Month box, which we're just getting them printed right now. Dandelion is the first plant of the month. And so we're going to be offering for the next 12 months a Plants of the Month box, starting off with this first box, which is dandelion. And we're so excited. And so the goal with this is to help encourage people to get outside, to learn the plants. So the booklet, it's a 32-page booklet that I wrote that offers, that explains what dandelion is, how to identify it, and then how to work with it and how to use it. And then it comes with you get the root itself in a couple of different forms, and the leaf, and then instructions on how to make medicine with it, how to make it into a tincture, how to make it into an infusion or a tea. And it's just sort of a self guide to encourage people to get outside. Because I know a lot of people are tired of being on Zoom and it can be exhausting. So we want to encourage people to learn and encourage people to get outside with the plants. So this is our way of doing it. We'll also be at farmers markets. We are at the Rockland Farmers Market and the Camden Farmers Market. And I haven't heard back if we're going to be at the Union or not, but we hope to be also at the Union Farmers Market. And, you know, as things move on, doing talks and collaborations, I just found out that I will be doing a talk at the Poor Farm on July 29th, I believe, and more information will come out on that. And that talk will be on how to make botanical cocktails. So it'll be how to use some of these things. And then longer term, you know, once we are sort of in a safer place and feeling safer, we'll be offering workshops here on the farm. And, you know, potentially also at the facility, which is on Route 17, our goal is to have gardens there that will be open to the public. And that's part of the bigger vision with that property over on 17, is to create gardens that will be open to the public, and hopefully a trail, and then long-term a retail and cafe space there. So I want to thank you all. And if anyone has questions, I'd be happy to answer any.
Wow, Kathy, that was an amazing presentation. Absolutely brilliant. I want it all. And I love that plant of the month box. Uh-oh, that's a little dangerous.
Thanks. We're having a lot of fun with that. Talk about a passion project. This has been a real lot of fun.
Wow.
Creating
all right. We have a couple questions in the
Sure.
chat for you. One is from Doug. He's asking, is there an identification guide for local wild herbs and plants that you could recommend?
Yeah, I should have. I'm so sorry that I didn't have this right handy, but I do have a resources. I know I have one in my resources. There are, and so bear with me. So a couple of field guides that I've recommended are the National Audubon Society Field Guide of North American. Oh, sorry, that's North American mushrooms. Sorry about that. But it's the Peterson Field Guide to Medicinal Plants and Herbs of Eastern and Central North America. And this is by Stephen Foster and James Duke. And I'm trying to, let me stop the screen share.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there's a way of, I don't know if I could like write that out for you, or maybe Deborah, or if you are taking that down.
I am. Are those in your book, Kathy?
They are. They're in the back. So
Okay.
in the back of the book, we have resources on all these different books that I recommend. And definitely there's a whole section on field guides. There's another Peterson's for the Western medicinal plants as well. And then Edible Wild Mushrooms by Lee Peterson. And then there's the Audubon one that I mentioned about mushrooms.
Okay.
And other herbal books and whatnot. And then resources on where you can find the herbs and where to buy them.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ginny is asking, do you need to keep the mixtures in the dark while waiting the 4 to 6 weeks?
Good question. Sorry, I didn't answer that or say that. So I don't necessarily keep it in the dark, but I also don't keep it in direct sunlight. So I'll keep it on, usually I'll put it on my countertop out of the sun. But keeping it in a dark place is fine as well.
Okay. And Robin, I think that question that you asked was just answered, but let us know if it wasn't. And if anybody would like to unmute and ask Kathy your question, feel free.
And one thing that I'd like to add that I meant to say is make sure to properly label your jars, and to make sure that you write on the label what it is that you've made, what you put in it, what the alcohol is, or vinegar. And if it's alcohol, what percentage of alcohol, so that you just are really clear on what it is, what's what.
Let's see. Kathy is asking, is the rhubarb bitters recipe for 1 quart jar?
Actually, so the rhubarb, a lot of the recipes for the tinctures in there are for a jam size jar. And so you can always just, double that or triple that to get to the size that you'd like.
Okay. Doug is saying your presentation was both informative and inspiring.
Thanks, Doug.
Joel said, thanks, wonderful presentation. And Ginny is asking, what proof vodka would you like to use?
So, you know, with this kind of medicine, this medicine making is considered folk medicine making. And so 40% is fine. If you can find Everclear, great. You know, the higher the alcohol percentage for some herbs, you know, I don't want to go too down the weeds in this, but some herbs do require a higher percentage of alcohol. But for this kind of stuff that I'm sharing with you, the regular vodka that's 40% is fine, which is like, I think 80 proof.
Okay. We have time for more questions if you have them. And again,
do you need to refrigerate any of this after you use it?
You don't, no, especially the alcohol ones, you don't. You can refrigerate the vinegar. It's, you know, I should say, yes, maybe you want to do the vinegar. We get our products tested through Cornell. I mean, I've been making vinegar stuff forever and I leave it just sitting out on my counter all the time. But Cornell likes to tell us to put refrigerate after opening on all our bottles now. So I want to err on the side of caution.
Hi, Tim and Lori. Do you have a question?
Yes, of course we do.
Is there any chance of the vinegar and the sugars from the honey fermenting in the jar and exploding?
Oh, wow. So I've never experienced that. I have made a lot of these, but I've never had anything explode. The fermentation is a possibility though. That is for real. If you're using like fresh material, especially, let's say it's like you're using like fresh rhubarb and fresh blueberry and lots of honey and that vinegar. Yeah, chances are you might get some fermentation. But with the dried herbs, there's no moisture. There's very little moisture in it. And even though there's moisture in the honey, I've never experienced anything like that. But again, you could put that in the fridge to help keep that issue from happening if you were concerned.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It's been great. And I look forward to getting your book.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to ask Kathi a question? All right, well, we will conclude then. This concludes our presentation for the evening, and all of us at Vose Library, thank you for attending our Vose Zoom with Vose Wednesday series, and we hope that you'll help spread the word and also join us on Wednesday, March 31st at 6 p.m. when Douglas Coffin, our cartoonist and children's book author, will also speak to us about his letter cutting. And we will have Douglas Coffin's cartoons on exhibit at Vose Library for the entire month of April. And we're really excited to have that there with us. And just a reminder that we are still doing appointments at Vose, and you're welcome to give us a call and join us at your leisure. So again, Kathi, thank you very much for a fantastic presentation, and good night, everybody. Be well and stay healthy.
Thanks.
Good night,
Good night,
Deborah.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night,
Thank you.
Kathy. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.